project will know, we work in a 2-weekly sprint, and towards the end of each fortnight we run a show and tell like this to talk about what we've been working on over the last couple of weeks, and also to lay out the priorities for the next sprint, the next couple of weeks. So if you could just move on, Pete. The vision for the website is that we will give our residents more free time by making everything they do with the council faster and easier. And one of the key things that we need to do that is to write the content for the website in a way that that delivers that vision, that is easy to understand, that people can engage with, and that really satisfies a genuine user need. So one of the critical things, next slide, Pete. Critical thing with this is that we're now starting to gain some momentum on this. You've seen quite a lot of the updates over the last 18 months, particularly on the technical development of the website. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about preparing the content and how we work with the service teams to develop that content in a way that delivers the vision that was on the previous slide. So a key focus for everything that we do, which shouldn't be a surprise, is that we take a user-centered approach, which means that we will only publish content that satisfies a defined user need, and we'll undertake research and we look at the analytics to try and really understand what it is that people want, and make sure that our content is written to deliver that need, not necessarily the content that the service teams have traditionally published. Next slide. Oh. Lovely, thanks. I don't know if it's me that froze then. So the way that we do this is very much like the website. So we're doing an iterative process, working in short sprints still, and we're aiming to develop minimum viable products for the web content. The benefit of that is we're not trying to boil the ocean. We're not trying to recreate every page for every service all at the same time. As I said a minute ago, we're focusing on the user needs. But in order to do that, we need to work very closely with the service teams, because we've got people that are experts in writing in the appropriate style and putting information together in a way that is understandable and helps users get to the end result that they're looking for. But we're not the technical experts, so we need to be working with the service teams, and particularly people on this call, to really work as a partnership. It's a two-way thing. So we'll start with the small, with minimum viable product, which means that we're focused on those key user journeys that we know from analytics and from looking at the call center stats, complaints data, that are really the things that either drive the most traffic or cause the most problems for customers. And then once we've done those, we can then come back and iterate and look at some of the less common user journeys. Next slide. So there are several components to this. So I've already mentioned user needs, very much focused on what our users trying to achieve, but we also appreciate that the services have got their own goals, and we have some technical constraints. We've got some legacy back office systems that we're needing to work, that have got some limitations that we need to work around. But where all this comes together is that bit in the middle, the user experience, and that's the critical thing, is to make sure that we have a positive and consistent user experience across the whole of the digital estate and through to delivery of the final service. And we model it, as I'm sure you're aware, we model it very much on the learnings from Gov UK. So there's a lot of similarities between the way that Gov UK works and the way that we're developing our site. Next slide, Pete. So key to this is who does what. So we in digital are building a team of content designers. Currently, we're supported very ably by our partners in Unboxed and Scroll in particular, who brought content strategists and content designers and are helping develop the skills within our own team. We've also got a growing team within the digital resource. We've got a couple of people moving across from the web team over the next week or so, who will also be helping with content development, content design. But the key thing about content design, as I said, it's a new discipline for us, and it's about really understanding how users consume content, creating the content in a way that makes sense, that people that don't have to necessarily understand all of the buzzwords that we tend to use. So the content designers will be looking to try and simplify as far as possible. And we've got new requirements around accessibility and indeed usability, things like mobile phones, etc. And what we're trying to do is build an expertise within the council, so that as time goes on, at the moment our focus is about creating content for the new website, but moving forward as services evolve and as new services come online, we want to be developing that core expertise within the council. Next slide. On the other side of this, in the service teams, we need to appoint product owners. So product owners are people within the services who understand how the service operates. They've got enough seniority and authority to be able to make decisions on the content that we create. And they can corral the subject matter experts. So they're not necessarily experts in every single aspect of their service, but they will know the people who are and will be able to bring them in as required. And between us, by pairing our content designers with your technical experts through the product owner, we can ensure that content is firstly easy to understand and straightforward, but also meets your technical needs, and especially where there are legal or legislative requirements to publish things that might not directly have a user need, but there is still a legal drive to publish them. Next slide, Pete. So this is our content design process. It looks complicated. There are 15 steps shown on this screen. Not as bad as it looks. So essentially, we start off at stage one with a kick-off meeting with the service team to agree the ways of working. So, for example, this afternoon we've got a kick-off meeting with the schools admissions team. So we'll be running through some of this again. If any of you from the schools admissions, you'll be seeing this again a little bit later. At that meeting, we will gather the information about who the key stakeholders, who are the subject experts, what do we already know about the service. Then we'll go away, and the designers will then look at, audit the existing content, look at the existing user journeys, report back to the product owner and collect their feedback, share what they've learned, and just sanity check it with the product owner, iterate that. Then at stage 7, we're starting to get into testing with users. Now these can be relatively small scale. It might only be a handful of users, but we start to test some of our hypotheses and start to test maybe potentially even looking at things like the information architecture, so the sections that we have under each area of the website, but also possibly starting to look at prototyping certain bits of the content. And again, we'll go through a stage of collaborating, planning and writing content pages, again getting feedback from the subject matter experts, iterating it, and then we get to 12, we're testing again with users, and essentially we'll work our way through to stage, and only when we've been through this stage, we've tested the content, subject matter experts are happy with it, that the product owner has the final sign off. They're the person that makes a decision on whether we can publish it, and at that point we can publish the content live and simultaneously unpublish the content from the legacy site. So that is essentially what the process is going to be. So I think that's me finished, and over to you, Pete.
Thanks very much, Jez. It's a really important process that we go through. It's really important that we keep working at it as a team. You'll hear lots of talk about collaboration and things like pair writing and various other terms that are used, but it's key to us that we work together to deliver as best content as we can. Okay, so now our kind of showing and telling bit a little bit more, what we've done the last couple of weeks, what we're kind of working on at the moment. So I'm going to get Eva and Nick, who are going to talk to some of the stuff that we've been doing around planning prototype, but also then changes to the live site from a technical perspective. So Nick will take us through some of those. Some of the things which we kind of got going on and kind of been on our back burner for a while. Long-form content, known to everybody as charts and graphs, so a way of presenting more complex data on the website is pretty much there now. We're just about to to start that. We got changes to the site-wide information architecture, which we've talked about before. Some of these are dependent on having a new environment where we can actually preview those changes before we put them live, but as live web pages. And then which goes on to that new workflow to help content editors. Fourth Bridge has now been implemented, which is our cascading series of alerts around major announcements, national announcements, such as the unfortunate demise of Prince Philip. And we're starting to look at things like IA and user journeys for drop curbs, things like that, which are ongoing at the moment. So first thing to talk about is the planning prototype. So I'm going to pass over to Eva now, who's going to take you through what we've been doing in the last couple of weeks around this.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Pete. Good afternoon, everyone. So here we are. We have our prototype. We're looking at the first journey, which is have your say on developments and building work. And we're excited about the fact that we're going to now be able to start looking at testing this with users. So our focus has always been on coming up with content, designing, creating content to meet the needs of users who want to have a say on what gets built in Buckinghamshire. So we're thinking about unified, simplified journeys, a very smooth journey, an efficient journey that's going to enable people to start at the beginning, work their way through the process, and complete whatever it was that they intended to do when they first logged on to the website, when they first visited the website. So it gives us an opportunity to see really if it is as smooth and as efficient as we think it should be, whether there's too much information, there's not enough information, and it gives us an opportunity just to really test the hypothesis. Does it work? Have we been able to give them enough information to be able to move smoothly through the journey and meet the needs of what it was that they intended to achieve when they first visited the website? Next slide, please, Pete. So what we've looked at is bringing together information that at the moment currently sits in different places on the various legacy websites. So there's lots of really good information there. Our aim is really just to pull together the most crucial, the most critical, the most needed bits of those content and to pull it into one unified, simplified journey. So the testing is a really good opportunity for us to make sure that we've actually done that well. And we'll be looking at speaking to users who have previously had experience with planning and those who haven't, have had no experience whatsoever. And essentially, this just simply means it gives us an idea of whether having previous experience with planning makes it easier for you to move through a particular journey, or whether having no experience at all makes it easier for you to move through a particular journey. Our aim, of course, is to ensure that whoever you are, whatever you may have done or not done in the past, you should be able to use the journey, you should be able to follow the journey smoothly and efficiently in a way that makes sense and enables you to complete whatever it is that you wanted to when you visited the website. I'm going to quickly pass over to Caroline just to see if there's anything that she wants to add. She's leading the UX for this and will be running the testing, just to see if there are any further points that she'd like to add.
Yes, thanks, Eva. So the purpose of the test is to look at the identified user journey, which is the key user journey, which was have your say on a planning and building application. So that's the journey we're going to test. So it's quite a small test, testing 3 pages, and on those 3 pages, we're testing 2 main things, which is the information architecture, so the content structure. Have we put it in a way that's easy for users to find? But also the labeling as well. Are the labels general terminology that is understood by most as opposed to internal jargon? We'll also be testing the quality of the content. And when I say the quality of the content, it's to ask questions such as, are users aware that they can influence a planning application? And if they can't, does the content on the site help them to answer that question? And so what I'll be doing is having an interview to understand some of their way of thinking, so their mental models, their way of thinking about planning applications and how they can influence them, but also if they know how to do it, how do they do that on the website? So I'll be asking them to follow a few tasks on the website to see how they can do that, which is to comment on a planning application, for example. So this test will be taking place in the next couple of weeks. If anyone is interested in observing, I'm more than happy to share a link out, even if just to see how the process of user testing is done. Please do get in contact with us, then we're more than happy to share that link. And I'll pass back over to you, Eva. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. I think that's it for our part of the presentation. Thanks very much, everyone, and I'll pass back to Pete.
Thank you very much, Eva and Caroline. I got really excited at the beginning of the week. We had a meeting to discuss the approach to the information architecture that was taking place for this. And it was hypothesized that we could essentially write 10 pages and close down 248 pages on the district site. I think there's probably some validation to do around that, but there's certainly huge gains to be made on this, and some really great work that's being done by Lil, Eva and Caroline and the team. Now I'm going to pass you over to Nick, who's going to talk to some of the changes that we've made to the live site, particularly around some of the technical implementation. But yeah, Nick.
Hello, thanks, Peter. Yeah, if we go to the first slide then, there are 4 areas that I'm going to talk about. And the first is something that I think is particularly of interest to a government service website, which needs to be used by everybody. We had a report from Site Improve, which identified some accessibility changes which we should make. This mostly was related to marking up various aspects of the page, which are obvious visual hints to here's a button, here's a navigation element, which if you're using a screen reader wouldn't be so obvious, because you're just reading through the text in the document and you don't understand, without the context of where it sits on the page or how it's highlighted or decorated to look like a button or a navigation element, its role is less obvious. So this, on the right hand side of the page here, you can see the browser's inspector view of a web page, and this isn't actually one of the changes that we made because of this report, but it's related to something else I'm going to talk about in a minute. This is a button that just says yes, and if you're listening to the content of the page just because your screen reader is scrolling through the different things and it just says yes and no, and you haven't caught that they're related to a question nearby that says, is this page useful, then that little black highlight says that this is a push button, and the ARIA role of this is marked up to say this is feedback, yes, this page is useful. And ARIA is Accessible Rich Internet Applications, something that the W3C, the Web Consortium, a standard that they published several years ago now, and it's the standard that screen readers follow to say, add extra context and information about what something is in the page where the structure of the page isn't so obvious. So it gives us flexibility to write things that look nice and look usable for visual readers, and also for users of screen readers. There was another way that we can get information about things that need fixing, and that is that we have automated monitoring of the site as well. And with some of the changes we made on Monday, the automated monitoring picked up an issue with this form at the bottom, because we had 2 buttons that happened to have the same HTML ID inside, and that's going to throw screen readers off as well, because if the 2 things with the same ID, then it's less obvious to the software, to the program, how to respond and how to interact with the page. So you can see there's a little graph of this page having very few errors, and then suddenly a little blip at the end of it, which was detected on Monday, and we fixed it within a couple of days. Can we go to the next one, please? The other aspect of accessibility that we fixed was contrast. There's a search button on the jobs page, I think, and the cookie notice were both flagged as not having quite high enough contrast for users who are partially sighted, and the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, said that this didn't meet their AAA standard for contrast. So we've increased the height of the cookie notice, the spacing of the text there, just to make it easier to read, and that's why this page appears a little bit split, because it's actually an illustration of the change in line height, just to to say this is one of the various areas that we've now improved the contrast, and the whole visual design of the site is very much around making everything easy to read. We go to the next slide, please. We've always had alerts as a feature on the new website, but until recently they were all orange, and we use them at the very beginning of right at the beginning of the life of this site because it coincided with the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were able to be put on a single page if they're just relevant to an announcement for a given service area, or for site-wide emergency announcements. They could cascade, so every page within a certain area of the site would have the same matching message. We had always planned to do a piece of work to make it possible to have a more somber tone for like the black one at the top, and also a less cautious looking one, which is blue, the third level down. We had this as a ticket that we kept intending to get round to, and then as people tend to die unexpectedly at times, you can't predict that. It caught us out, and we had to rush to implement this in a non-editable way for the death of the Duke of Edinburgh in April. Since then, we've now made this something that editors have access to, or at least the site admins have access to, and so we've got 3 customizable levels, and they can be added and removed without the intervention of a developer anymore. Can we go to the next one, please? So there's going to be about 3 slides here that show a feature and the way it works. We've had a feedback, is this page useful feature on almost all pages, I believe, since many months ago, but it was being stored in Google Analytics just as a record of the page and the user's answer, yes or no. Whereas when people are finding that the page isn't working for them, it would be better for us to understand more about why the user isn't satisfied. So next slide, please. With this new feature, if you click yes, you still get a thank you message. If you click no, then the little widget at the bottom, that blue banner, opens a little bit more and asks you for details. And this went live on Monday, and we're already seeing the members of the public are enjoying the ability to tell us what's wrong with the pages. I'm hoping that over time that will give us useful information about how we can improve them, but I think 2-3 days of information isn't quite enough yet. Once this is submitted again, it still says thank you. It gives you the same message. Can we go to the next one, please? Once we've submitted those, we've got a reports area within the admin area that editors and site admins can see, and there's a usefulness feedback report and a comments report, and finally on this, the next one, please, Peter. Thank you. This is exportable for as a spreadsheet so that people can have a good look at the details and sort it by page and try to identify what areas of the site are causing users the most difficulty. Okay, go to the next one, please. We also did a big upgrade on Monday this week of Wagtail, which is that's the icon at the top right, or at the top of the black bar that you can see. That's the content management system that this site is running on, to a new version which overhauls the way that the page editor works under the skin. Visually, it's very almost undetectable, the changes, but it adds a few features. You can now copy a field, so that paragraph on the right could be copied easily, and that might be useful for people creating, I don't know, an accordion with lots of repeated but slightly different data. There's slight improvements in the performance, but as this screenshot shows, you can also add comments to fields, and they don't get saved until the editor has saved a draft or published the page. Can we go to the next slide, please? But once they are, they can be commented. Sorry, they can be comments on either a single field as a whole, and it can be an image field or a whole title, or as you can see in the middle, that super long word is highlighted, and we're just commenting on those two words. So I'm hoping that, you know, this isn't embedded in our editorial practice for the web team yet, because it's a brand new feature, but I'm hoping that this will help to change the way we review, copy content before it's made public. Just like, can we go to the next slide, please? Just like with you know, Microsoft Word, which I guess most people are familiar with, comments can be resolved, deleted, and replied to. And finally, my last slide, please. You can also just hide them all together or subscribe to hear about updates and responses to your comments. So yeah, lots of changes. This was a big change to the architecture of the site in several ways, and we also we broke a couple of things on Monday, and I can see just by the attendees list of who's in this call, thanks to one or two of the editors who reported that certain field types weren't available, and we've responded to that, and that's now fixed as well. Thankfully, no actual data was in danger, but I think that the whole new version of Wagtail is all live and working as intended. Back to you, Pete.
Right. Thank you very much, Nick. As Nick says, lots of stuff going live, lots of technical stuff that we're implementing at the moment, which is really good. So a few things that we're coming up next. So I won't run through all of these in great detail, but we're doing, as we talked about, planning and building control, lots of stuff going on in there. User interviews as well, as Eva mentioned. Revs and bends, we're running click tests and moderated usability tests. So again, those kind of taking you through the process of doing things in the revs and bend space. Parking, we're looking at their new system implementation, and we're iterating at the moment around their content, which has been through several versions. Schools of Missions, we have a kickoff meeting this afternoon to talk to them about the process of delivering new Schools of Missions content. Client transport, we're currently in the process of doing user research and delivering timelines to the director in that service to allow us to take that forward. And one thing that our political members really dislike about the site at the moment is the district location checker. So there are about 60 or so instances on the current site where you have to choose which district you belong to in order to do something. So you may go off and query a waste system, or you may go off and query a planning system, but we ask you, what is your district? We also provide the opportunity to have a postcode lookup, but that has problems with certain postcodes. We know that there are about 1% of postcodes fail because they're shared between different districts, and it may even be outside of Buckinghamshire. So we're doing some user research and prototyping, or we're shortly about to do some user research and prototyping around what good looks like in that space, so that we will use just postcodes and actually be able to return all of that data rather than just the data that we know about. Of I think of our 15,000 postcodes or so, about 180 of them fail. Anyway, that's it for today. We're pretty much bang on 2:30. Next show and tell 24th of June. If anybody has any questions, either shout out or drop them in the chat. Otherwise, we will see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much. I can see quickly. So a question mark from Ryan around editors and admins being given a heads up before future changes. I think ultimately the changes shouldn't have affected anything. So the fact that we lost those particular accordion types was a problem because it broke. So in theory, there shouldn't have been anything. There will be training around the new commenting and stuff like that will come. But in terms of, yes, we shouldn't have broken it, and almost you wouldn't have known, kind of thing. So Ryan, apologies for that, and thanks for pointing it out.
Yeah, it's just helpful just you know, if there's a heads up, it's just working on the premise that something might always go wrong, whether it's intentional or not. And it just means that we just can be aware if anything funny happens on that day, there might be a reason why. That's all. And with the kind of on it as it is, so that's great. So it'd be really interesting to see more about how the commenting works.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. As I say, Nick, I think is preparing training material that will be used to take everybody through any changes that we've made. So yeah, question around Liz is, will all accessibility issues be addressed? We aim to address all of them. Whether we ever get to everything, I'm not sure. But yes, they should be, and content editors should be informed. So from a Wagtail perspective, as I say, we will be preparing training material which will be distributed to all editors. That's it. Anybody else? Any more? Otherwise, we'll close it down. And thank you very much, everybody.
Team.